Hello, and thank you for joining me today. Well, this is the Tuesday, January 24th edition of our video devotionals, and thank you so much for joining us today. Hope your Tuesday is going well, and we call this Thankful Tuesday, so we are certainly thankful for all the things that God does, the things we perceive and the things we don't, just to have a general attitude of thanks. And of course, this is the beginning of the last full week of the month of January for this year. So a week from today will be the very last day, 31 days in January, and hard to believe we'll have 1 month already in the books, as they say. But that means just take advantage of the days and the time that we have, and let's just simply make today a good day one way or another, okay? All right, so we're reading from the Today book. Since today's January 24th, and that sounds like the appropriate date to read about today, of course. It says here, in 1848, it was the discovery of gold in the United States. And, we can say a lot about that. I looked up what gold goes for an ounce, and as of at this point, this time of day, gold is $1,921.50 an ounce. So you can multiply it out. If you owned a pound, 16 ounces of gold, then you can figure on that being about $3,200 for a pound of gold. So we know through history, gold is kind of the mark of absolute wealth. It seems like, even when you go back to the book of Genesis, it speaks about there in the beginning. It speaks about gold. And then, of course, you can look through the Bible, see all that it speaks about gold. Our country used to be on what was called a gold standard. And I think what that meant is the amount of cash that we have circulating in the United States was based upon the value of gold that the United States possessed. And I know I've always heard of Fort Knox, Kentucky. I don't know if that was the only place, but I think that's still a place where gold is kept in for our country and what our country, we'll just say our country owns. So anyway, gold, pretty important. So it was discovered here in the United States in 1848. Then in 1908, the first Boy Scout troop was organized in England. And I know a lot of you out there either have participated in, your children in the Boy Scouts. And then in 1965, Winston Churchill died. And of course, he was the Prime Minister of England during World War II. So that's our entries for today. Next, we go to the Bible. And we're going to look at Exodus chapter 22 today and give just a few verses and try to be a help, a blessing, a challenge. And that's kind of the goal. So thank you all who watch the videos. We appreciate you. Of course, there's still people out there that we continue to pray for. A gentleman who watches our videos, his wife has just recently passed away. We're in prayer for him. There's a lady in our church. She was an aunt to her niece and her husband, who died in a car accident suddenly, just like that, about 2 o'clock in the morning, I think Friday morning, and left 3 children at home. There's a lady that watches this regularly. She still asks us to pray for her sickness. There's another lady who watches who is, she requests from time to time about her family and her own health. And then, of course, we've got faithful viewers who watch whose 34-year-old son passed away not too long ago. So all that to say, there's a lot to pray for and a lot of people to pray for, and let's do our best to do that. I know it takes intense labor to do that, and I think that's one of the reasons why it's a great test of our faith is the amount of time and effort that we put into praying for people. And there's a lot of things that try to distract us from that, but so very important. So Exodus chapter 22, and I'm going to begin in verse number 21, and we're basically going to look at what I would call four groups of people. All right, notice verse 21. Thou shalt neither vex a stranger nor oppress him, for ye were strangers in the land of Egypt. So you've got number 1, the stranger. Verse 22, ye shall not afflict any widow or fatherless child. So you've got the widow, number 2, the fatherless child, number 3. If thou afflict them in any wise, and they cry at all unto me, I will surely hear their cry, and my wrath shall wax hot, and I will kill you with the sword, and your wives shall be widows, and your children fatherless. And then the last verse is verse 25. If thou lend money to any of my people that is poor by thee, thou shalt not be to him as an usurer, neither shalt thou lay upon him usury. So that fourth group would be the poor. So you've got the stranger, you've got the widow, you've got the fatherless, and then you've got the poor here. And just within these few verses here, we see the mindset, the character of God. That's our theme that we have for our Wednesday evening Bible studies. In fact, we began with Exodus 20 with the 10 Commandments, and then we went to Exodus 21, 22 was this past week, and then tomorrow night we will do Exodus 23 and just show you the character and the mindset of God, which, by the way, has not changed. Some of the punishments, you might say, have changed just because of how the civil governments of our day would handle certain things. But when you look at this, if God says don't vex a stranger, then you can count on it. Then if he meant it then, he means it now. To vex, to harass, if you please, to oppress, that means to do things that really makes it difficult for them. He said, because you were strangers. You know what it's like to be a stranger when you were in Egypt. And look how you were treated. So the right treatment of the stranger. Now, putting that in our day and time, it's real simple. First of all, you got to treat everybody right. And just because they're a stranger, they might be not familiar to you. You know this. We hear about all the prejudice and the problems with race and all of that. Well, all these things boil down to really one thing, and that's hatred. It comes down to hatred. It comes down to pride and selfishness. So all that to say, the stranger should not be oppressed. Then it talks about kind of grouping these two together, but basically they would be in the same situation, the widow and the fatherless child, someone who doesn't really have someone to defend them because of the loss either of a husband or a fatherless child. And how sad in that day and in our day, people take advantage of people who are in desperate situations or don't have the securities, if you please. So God said, here's the thing. He says, if they cry at all unto me, imagine a widow or a fatherless child who basically is being, something's being done against them in a negative way. And they just simply say, man, I just wish things were better. Something simple like that where God says, I hear that. And God says, I'm going to take care of it. And notice how extreme this was right here. It says, and my wrath shall wax hot. Now, we can think of some sins that we preach about and talk about that God, we say, man, he is really hot about that. And I'm not saying he's not hot about some things, and we can look at some of the things that God has done in judgment. But I'm going to tell you something. For anybody to think this is not, this wouldn't be at the top of the list or right there at the top, my wrath shall wax hot, and I will kill you with the sword, and your wives shall be widows and your children fatherless. So that's what a stern warning there. And then the poor people. And he's basically saying your own people, you go and you would charge interest, whether it's high or not. God says you shouldn't be charging usury, which is basically charging interest to get money back from something that they might need, and you're charging interest on that. God says you're not supposed to do that. So we know in our day and age, there's always going to be the stranger in perspective to other people. You've got the widows, you've got the fatherless, and certainly you have the poor. And there's things that we just are supposed to be right in, especially the children of God, the people of God. We should know much better and are more accountable than the world would be. But these are just some basic things that God said, hey, do these things, do right, and they definitely get God's attention. God's the one who came up with these ideas. As I told our people as I close here, God didn't say, okay, you guys get together and think about some laws and some judgments and some statutes. I'll read over them and see if it's good, and we'll make that the judgments. No, God says, Moses, write this. These are the judgments. So God came up with these things. So very important. Well, we're going to close right there. Hope you stay safe and healthy today. We'll see you tomorrow, Lord willing. Have a great day.